Good morning. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Nice to be here again. Sure. Things are getting better. As we talked earlier, we knew that under the curve when the quarantine, the numbers that from the self quarantine would come out, you would see all those people that were sick now manifest those diseases. You've seen that, I think, at the peak, and I've talked to Michelle and others that were on the show previously, that the people that you're seeing, I think the peak was on April 9th, they told me. So now you're now seeing from that peak a slow decline of the numbers of morbidity. So you're still seeing mortality rates. You're still seeing morbidity rates, people that manifest the disease, but you're now seeing a decline in the death rates in some of these major cities. So that's good news to see. But that does not mean that we're out of the woods. It just means that we're now getting a handle on this.
Yes. It's a good read if you're bored. It's a good read. So I'm going to focus on the average listener because it covers a lot, and a lot of it doesn't apply to many people. But the spirit of it was paycheck protection. The idea was we are in a unique situation. We have a lot of uncertainty going on. So how can we keep the economy, keep our folks with cash so they don't lose out what they've done, their jobs, the businesses. So there was a number of huge components, one of them at the corporate level. And that the one at the corporate level was really, let's provide some financing for the small businesses. Let's give them ability to get some loans that have attached to it. If you use it for certain purposes, you can get forgiveness of those loans. So it allows you to retain your employees. For mid-sized businesses, some low-cost loans to keep them going, recognizing the cash flow doesn't always align with business. And then for the individual, it's getting it down to the individual level and providing some short-term cash relief so we can make it through this window of time until we get to the other side of this. So each one of those buckets, individual, small businesses, mid to large size businesses, were all impacted. And when I say businesses, probably is better to say organizations, because it's more than just businesses. It's not for profits. It's churches. For the first time ever, the idea is let's keep people getting paychecks, getting the cash flow so they can get through this window of time.
Yeah, I've seen some of the justifications for this current package, which is different than previous stimulus packages in our economy, where they would give the money to large corporations and big banks. Now instead they're pushing it towards small businesses and towards the individuals. And the concept being keeping people, as many people as possible, off of unemployment, and the money that they would have been sending to unemployment, maybe now they're sending to the businesses to stay open and to keep the people floating. Is that your understanding as well?
That's the spirit of it. I guess the word paycheck protection is as best we can. We might not be able to mirror the paycheck exactly, but let's get it as close as we can to what they were getting in February. Let's hope that we can, in April and May, we can mirror it. So again, these businesses will be around on the other side, so everybody can transition back into their normal employment.
Yeah, theoretically, I like this idea better than previous stimulus packages, but we'll be playing our armchair quarterback probably in the years to follow to see. But Dr. Singh, from your political views, running for Congress and those kind of things, what do you think about this stimulus package and the spirit of it?
It's a great spread. This was well thought out. As we're fixing the bugs as we unroll this, and we need more money. So actually, we're hoping that more money can come towards this. We're lucky to have this. Actually, it's well thought out. The administration, the Trump administration, has done a great job with this. I've actually read articles on a global perspective of countries that are shut down and can't afford this. They're suffering. They're not even sure they can get food. So what we've done is quite incredible. Look, comparing other countries, this is really an excellent thing.
Yeah. So Dave, let's deal specifically with the small business side of it, and then we'll come back and talk to the average listener as well. But with so many of the small businesses struggling, how does this stimulus package specifically offer relief to them?
Yeah, so really, there's a number of elements through a number of bills that have been passed. More bills passed with big dollars in the last 4 weeks than many years. But the biggest one, which was this CARES Act, which includes in a very large portion of time, there was an allocation towards the Paycheck Protection Plan, which is the ability to get, in essence, a short-term loan, a loan that allows you. It's based on a formula of your compensation that you paid, the average compensation you paid in 2019. In this formula, it says, we'll get, if you qualify for it, which you have to be under a certain amount of employees, 500 in many cases. Some other industries is a little larger number. So in all these cases, each company, each small business, it's unique to them, and it's very important that they're interacting with their bank, with their professional advisors. But assuming that you qualify, you apply for this loan, and it's a meaningful loan. It's a very low interest rate, 1%. You pay it back over 2 years starting next year. But a portion of it, if it's used for payroll, can be forgiven and will be forgiven. So in an example where maybe you qualify for a $100,000 loan, when you get the money the next 8 weeks, if you use it for payroll, and there's a bunch of rules surrounding it, but in essence, if you pay your people as you were before, and you keep them on payroll, those payments, you don't pay that money back. So if there is a way that you can have your employees on in any fashion, working from home in any way possible. If you're a fast food restaurant and you have a drive-through window, you're now paying them with this money that you don't have to pay back. So while you might not have the volume of business or any business, at least and if you're an employee, you can pay yourself. So it provides the ability to sort of keep the mechanism of the family, the individual getting compensated without a penalty by the small business that they have to pay it back.
So then, as you mentioned, that there's the forgivable portion of that. My understanding, because we've been working through this with our employees as well, trying to figure out the best solutions. My understanding is that at least 75 or 80% of the total amount of loan has to go back to compensation. But a percentage can go towards like utilities and a couple of operating things. Those regulations and those rules can be dealt with. You can get more information from whom? From your CPA? From your bank?
Yeah, I would. You'll be wanting to work with your finance people or your CPA to augment it. I've done more calculations in the last, or reviewed more. So I've been working with my clients. But the next phase of that is the number 75%, 75%, if you had 100 employees when this started, you need to have 75. The forgiveness will be adjusted down if you don't hit certain metrics. It's like everything with the government. It's Job Protection Act for all the accountants. Right. And so there's a lot of math going on in here, but there is an element of if a high percentage gets used, a lot of that will be forgiven. and utility cost. Mortgage payments are also included, benefits. So it does provide an organization the opportunity to retain their employees.
So then my understanding is the amount available to a small business is essentially 2 times their monthly payroll, and that the forgiveness rate is attached to the percentage of the number of employees that are continued to be employed as of June 30th. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's actually 2.5 times.
2.5 times. Okay, so then if I borrowed, to use your number, $100,000 to pay my staff, then if 100% of my staff is still employed June 30th, then 100% of my loan would be forgiven. Is that correct?
Well, there's a lot of math there, but it's how much you spend over the next
Okay.
8 weeks after you get the money.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Dave, I have a question on 2 things. So, let's say you had to let go of your employees, and so
Yes.
once you get back on this, can you rehire them and start back on this track? That's one. And number 2, the mortgages and the bills, are they forgivable, or are they part of a loan?
Yeah, it's a good question. So yes, you can bring them back. We have a number of situations, multi-unit restaurants where they are in a situation where they won't be able to bring everybody back, but they can bring some back.
Okay.
So that's helpful. And so what happens is you get the money, you pay your utility bill, and then you submit. And the mechanisms aren't in place yet, but you'll be indicating, okay, I spent $10,000 with my DTE and Consumers Energy, and here's the bills, or however the tools are, and then they say, okay, you small business, you don't have to pay that back.
Okay.
And so it does give relief that way, because it's, imagine a business that's shut down still gets a utility bill. There's no revenue coming in, but they got these fixed costs. Right. So it's an effort to cover some fixed costs, and the cost of keeping as many of your people as it makes sense. There's no 100% or 0% answer in every unique situation with our clients. It is a math formula.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we all know that small businesses really are the backbone of the American economy. So anything that we can do to bolster them is important. That doesn't minimize the importance of the super corporations and all those, but in previous recoveries, the recovery was a lot slower when the money went to those super corporations first, because the small businesses collapsed and so many people lost their jobs. So this is a very interesting experiment. I think that there's a lot of science behind it, a lot of research behind it, and we'll see what happens. Dr. Singh, I know you're a small business owner as well, so you're navigating through all of these things. Dave, what advice do you have to Dr. Singh with regard to dealing with his bank and getting done with the process?
Yeah, first and foremost, contact your banker. Most banks are taking care of their customers first because they have such a high volume of activity. It's very difficult for them to bring on a new customer. Some are accepting new customers. So, I've talked to tons of bankers and banks. They are well versed now. A week ago, there was a lot of panic and people trying to figure out how to get underwriting and all these things in line. I have at the firm, we do have a number of clients that have already received their PPP loan, which depending on the bank, depending on the situation. So, and many are expected to come over the next 10 days. And once the money lands into your bank account, that's really when you've entered into the loan. But I would encourage you to start with your bank, and even a small business that has 5 employees. If you are paying them, I'll just use simple math, $5,000 each, so $25,000 a month. You can get a loan for $62,500, and if you use it for compensation, utilities, rent, it's a forgivable loan. So it allows you to not lose those employees. Because what's really important, if you think about it, is when you start back up, you want your people back.
Yeah.
And so if you've laid them off, if they've moved on, and that was one of the big challenges in 08 was the economy, people had to jump to other jobs. So businesses were scrambling, rebuilding on the other side. This is a tool to keep your key people.
Yeah,
keep your people.
We all know the learning curve and the amount of time to train a new employee is, costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time, and it could even affect our customer service during that training time, as opposed to being able to keep people that you already trust and that have already been well trained. And so this whole system seems to me to be a good concept. So again, in theory, we'll see how it actually plays out. But then also, go ahead.
So Jeff, one more thing. We talked about small businesses and the homeowners, which is great. This is the bulk of it. I'm also a farmer, and I have in my constituent where I live, we have such a big mix between all kinds of business, from guys that own ice cream shops to actually farms. And I know there's something in there. Dave, would you tell us a little bit about what's going on with the farms? Canning season. Is there much there?
So while I read 860 pages, I have no farm clients, so I'm not really in a position to answer that one. I don't want to go. Anybody who specializes in that area, and there's provisions for many industries. I work with a lot of restaurants, so it's very there's a lot of carve outs for restaurants, but I'm not versed in farms.
Where would you send somebody who had questions about from a farming standpoint?
Yes, so I would send them right to their CPA, because we have folks within our firm that work in the agricultural space. I'm not one of them. I'm in I guess Middle Macomb County. It's more service and manufacturing.
That's right. So, your office is right there on Hall Road and Romeo Plank, right? So there's not a lot of farms anymore in that area. So yeah, I get that.
Yep.
So, in a pretty rare gesture, nonprofits were included in this, and I referenced it earlier, but why now? Because in the past, that nonprofits and churches typically are not included in these things. Why do you think that this time around it was included? Bisham Singh, maybe you have a thought about that.
I think, like Dave said, we compared the 2008 models. We looked what went wrong, and then we have a businessman in the White House. So I think this, and really good leaders in running the economy. So I think this administration really looked at this, and some of this comes naturally. They looked at small businesses. They looked at, and like Dave said, when we hit the reset button and we go back to work, we want to make sure our staff's there, our building's there, our mortgage is paid, and whether it's a loan, whether it's forgiveness. But then it gets back to the economy, and we can move past that stage of that struggle and get back to business as usual. We may struggle a little bit, but it won't be a financial burden. Yeah. It won't be an employee burden. We're going to actually start back again.
Yeah, Dave, do you have anything to add with regard to why are they including nonprofits and churches now?
Well, I can just personalize it in that, if you think about the role that nonprofits and churches play in a community and a society, that if you didn't include them and these folks, you lost them. So and you weren't able to read. When you onboard your not-for-profit or these not-for-profits, many of them are vital and critical right now. If they have no revenue coming in, how do you pay your people? Then you have to shut them down. You're shutting down a vital service within the community. It's what makes a community a community. So I think it was very wise. And everything from, we've seen the impact at Heritage to, I'm on a small organization called Leadership Macomb, which provides leadership training to adults and high school juniors, high school students, around Macomb County in leadership. It's mostly volunteers, and we have 3 staff. If we lose those staff, the volunteers don't have the bandwidth to start it back up. So a leadership organization disappears without this. Right. It's things like that I think made a lot of sense. And in the organizations that I've been interacting with, that I routinely interact with, whether it's Heritage or some other ministries, this is a vital part of being able to keep serving the community.
Yeah.
And Jeff, like Dave said, nonprofits provide resources that the government doesn't. They're the kind of the glue that keeps things together in our community. And without that, the community kind of dissipates, it falls apart.
Yeah, I know I've
churches.
seen some pundits kind of question the separation of church and state with regard to some of this, but I think that the motivation behind it is less about, they're not endorsing any religions. What they're saying is, we need these nonprofit organizations, as you mentioned, the glue in the communities, to still be functioning after this, massive situation. And if you think of it this way, for instance, at Heritage Church, we have a food pantry where we feed hundreds and hundreds of people every week with enough food for the whole week. And of course, as people are losing their jobs, our needs to be able to serve those people in the community, and we serve them regardless of their background or where they're coming from or whether they believe like we believe or not. They're just hungry people, so we feed them. Some of the resources that we get are donated by our church people. Some of the resources that we get are donated, much of the resources we get actually, are donated from large companies like Sam's Club and Costco and Panera Bread, those kinds of places. And then some of the food that's being distributed is coming from the county food banks. And in that situation, sometimes people forget the government is a top-down organization, right? People at the top make decisions and then it goes down from there. So oftentimes the government's difficulty in dealing with people on the street is distribution. And the local churches and the local nonprofits are everywhere. So we are a great distribution system that the government doesn't have to pay for or fund, and we're managed by hundreds of volunteers and those kinds of things. And so if they lose the nonprofits, including the churches that are doing good in the community, if they lose those, they lose a lot of their distribution system. And then the amount of money and the amount of resources that actually make it to the street winds up becoming far less because of the bureaucracy they have to build. So there is this partnership, and in my opinion as a pastor, the concepts of separation of church and state do not mean that religious organizations have no right to be in the public forum. It's just that the government cannot endorse them, right? So the government can't say we like these guys and we don't like those guys. It has to be equal with no preferential treatment. So I can appreciate that. Let me move off of that topic because I know a lot of our viewers aren't really paying attention so much to those areas. They're really, what they want to know is, when am I getting my check, right? So on a personal level, I believe that some of those things have begun being distributed now. But Dave, talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, so the when is, some are getting it this week. Some of my family members, I've seen texts this morning that they had theirs deposited into their bank account today. And some will be getting it later because those who are getting it early are the ones where the IRS has your bank account. So they know, because it's all being driven through the Internal Revenue Service. And so if you have filed your return and had a refund and you had it direct deposited, they have your bank account. They have the ability to make that deposit for you. If they don't, if you filed your return and have never provided them with that information, you'll be getting a check in the mail, and that takes more time to process. This isn't a check that they had sitting there already on the side that they just had to sign. So that will increase the amount of time it will take for you to receive your funds. There is a government, IRS.gov. I know they have added a feature, where's my check type feature. So encourage everybody to do some, you got some free time, do some searching of the web and find out there. And so the one thing I really encourage everybody to think about is, if you're married filing joint, maybe you have a small child, you got a check for $2,900, and like, this is awesome, great. This is that money is meant to get us through a short-term problem. So don't spend it today on a new $2,900 entertainment system. I strongly encourage, think about the next window of time here. It's April 15th, tax day. For most years, and think about the next 6 to 8 weeks and how you can use that money to get through the next 6 to 8 weeks. And if you don't need it to use it, put it aside as some rainy day money, a nest egg type situation. I know it's supposed to help stimulate the economy. This is to help us to get by. We need to be smart. We are strongly encouraging all our clients, and I will individualize this, to look at your budget, what cash you expect to come in. whether it's unemployment, your compensation, hopefully you're getting your compensation, and what expenditures you have. And if you've never gotten into doing budgeting, it's time to get into it now. Really so take the emotion out of it now when that check's here and you actually have a little bit of extra money, because when the panic sets in, that's when we make probably less than our best decisions.
So I just heard my main financial advisor just recommended that I not blow the stimulus check, which means, I've been watching a lot of Netflix lately. So
You're right.
Does this mean I shouldn't go out and buy a tiger? Because that's what I was thinking about doing. But no, so
that's why Bonnie is in charge of your cash flow.
actually, it was her idea. So
Oh, all right. Well, then we need some intervention.
Yeah. So that does make a lot of sense. I mean, if you also track along with some of the top financial advisors, Dave Ramsey or whatever, one of the biggest challenges for a lot of people is to get that $1,000 safety net thing in place. Well, here it is, right? It's landing in your lap,
Right.
And then start snowballing, paying down some of those debts so that you can have more stability in the future. Now, for people who aren't going to lose their jobs and are going to be stable during this time, this is an opportunity to get ahead. But for those that are having their jobs at risk, this is an opportunity maybe to float when you combine the increases in the unemployment money that's coming in, right? They go
Right.
from 350 to 600 or 900, whatever. When they get that, then this stimulus package can also help offset some of the other expenses and maybe keep people in a stable place hopefully through the end of June at least, right?
And that's the spirit of the other component. If you do end up unfortunately getting laid off, the government is augmenting the unemployment check with the $600 up to $600 additional a week. It's being run through the state, so it's not going to get a check from the IRS. You'll be getting a check from the state of Michigan, and so I'm not sure if those have hit yet. Again, these programs are all hitting very quickly, but it is an extra $600. So if you're at the maximum, which is like $360 something, it's $960. One word of caution. This is taxable. Unemployment compensation is taxable. It goes on your tax return. So if you traditionally have withholding, again, this is tax advisor stuff. You got to look at your individual situation. What I don't want to see happen is you get 6 weeks of unemployment at $900. You have nothing withheld, and next year you owe a bunch of taxes on it.
Right.
So that's just a little tax caution in this. So that isn't totally free money, but it is a nice supplement for this short-term window of time to get us to the other side.
So that's an interesting thing as we're starting to wrap up here. There is a difference between the stimulus checks that most people are going to be getting. That money, is that taxable?
It is not.
But the unemployment boost is taxable. Okay.
Unemployment money has always been taxable unless some new legislation comes out and they change it. And so I would say things are changing, as the doctor knows. When this act came out, there was tons of follow-up stuff that came out to clarify what they meant in the 860 pages, because it's impossible to think of every permutation of interpretation when you write something like this. So stay tuned. Things may change. My last real important thing is everybody needs to, every business owner, small business owner, heritage, we need to think about how we are going to do business, do life as we transition out of the quarantine, and how we're going to operate, how we're going to meet the needs of our constituents, whatever we are. The number one thing we're transitioning to from a consulting standpoint is think about how to do what you do on the other side and how that transition is going to work so we can get up and going quicker. If we wait until the quarantine's out, if you're a movie theater, so what am I going to do? I'm going to let everybody sit next to each other on day one. There's going to be some planning. It's for this to be as healthy, as safe and as effective a transition back. Start planning. in just think that way as a family as well.
Yeah. How about you, Dr. Singh? Do you have any final words?
I think what Dave said, that when this is over, he's absolutely right. It's not going to go business as usual. We're going to slowly get back into the mainstream of things. Mass gatherings might still be limited for a very long time until that vaccine comes through. So at the same point, maybe face coverings and whatever they decide to implement, and more testing. So at that point, we need to still have, stay healthy, stay strong, and actually boost our immune systems and not be exposed. Try not to limit our exposure. Wash our hands. Still follow the rules.
Right.
That is available.
Well, good. So from my perspective, as somebody who's trying to figure out how to take care of the few dozen employees that we have, one of the things I want to encourage any small business owners that are watching, get in line quickly. Contact your bank as soon as possible. So if you take the numbers, somewhere close to $350 billion was designated towards the payroll protection plans. That's incredibly generous, and that's exciting. The issue would be this: the average small business has about 20 employees, and there's about 8 million of them. So there's not enough to go around for everybody. And so I was on a phone call with the head of the SBA, the Small Business Association, just recently, and he was talking about that specific thing, that there may be other rounds of this kind of package to help, but there's no guarantee. So don't wait. Don't hope that it'll still be there a month from now, because it'll be gone. They're processing thousands a day. So don't miss out on that. And then for the individuals, to summarize what Dave was recommending earlier, it's one of those things, this check that you're going to receive, hopefully in the next few days or few weeks, is really designed to keep you floating and to keep you going through the year. But don't waste this opportunity. If you already have plenty of resources, you're going to make it through the summer, then use this to do good. Use this to help other people. Invest it, pay off some bills, whatever. But we're not advising that you go out and buy yourself a Tiger or a $3,000 entertainment center or whatever. So I just want to wrap up and finish with this. We all of us work in nonprofits and work for the betterment of our communities. And so we just want to encourage you, if you need help and you need to get help, use heritagechurch.com. And there's a button on our website, heritagechurch.com, that says get help. If you need food in particular, we're equipped to be able to help you with that. Any other issues that you may have, somebody needs to shop for you or something, we'll find a way. We want to find a way to help you. If you want to give help, Americans are always best, I believe, when we are going at solving a problem, when we're not hiding, but we're pursuing solving a problem. And so if you'd like to give help, maybe donate resources, donate non-perishable items for the food pantry. Maybe you'd like to give money to help with Dr. Singh's projects in buying N95 masks for our frontline workers and being able to provide food for our frontline workers. Then make sure that you designate that as well. There's a place to be able to give on that at heritagechurch.com. I've already referenced once or twice, but Dr. Singh is running for the 10th Congressional District to be in the House of Representatives for the U.S. Dr. Singh, what is your website? How can you get more information about your candidacy?
It's drbishamsingh.com. It's my name. And all the stuff that we just talked about, the president's, just these plans are on my website as well, updated from last Friday.
Okay.
It's all on there.
Good. I know as Christians, all three of us here on the show today are Christians, and we believe that God's in control of these things, and that that God is there to comfort you, and that He's your refuge and He's your rock. So I just want to encourage you, pray for yourself and your family, but pray for our nation, pray for our leadership, that they continue to have wisdom. And then I've been praying that God would empower our scientists and our doctors and all those people that are working on the front lines to solve this, that we'd get a solution quickly, and that then the United States of America would be able to be a blessing to the rest of the world and be able to provide health and security as we come out of this. We'll come out of this together. So I want to thank you for joining us today. I want to say God bless you, and we'll see you in the next episode.